Okay, I've got it live.
Right. So at this time, the board has completed their closed session. It is 5:29 p.m. and no action was taken. So item D1, public comment. Ms. Westphal, I believe we have a couple of public comments this evening.
Correct. I'm going to let the one who, we have two, I'll be reading one, and then we have another one from Augustine Vizcaíno. And since he is here, I'm going to allow him to talk. So Augustine, I'm going to allow you to talk. So here you go.
Thank you, Terry. Can you hear me?
Can hear you. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Great.
Augustine.
My name is Agustin Vizcaíno, and I teach Spanish at San Inés High School. We have two levels of Spanish speakers classes, a beginning Spanish for Spanish speakers and an advanced Spanish for Spanish speakers. In these classes, the students already bring a lot of culture and language to the class from what many of them, their families have taught them since before they were born. All we do is help them get better at their reading and writing, as well as presenting information in Spanish. We read works of great authors such as Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra, Isabel Allende, Gabriel García Márquez, Pablo Neruda, Juan Rulfo, and Emilia Pardo Bazán, to name a few. For students last year, four students, Alexa Jimenez, Ashley Figueroa, Lupita Bugarin, and Patricia Lopez, brought to my attention the question if our Spanish for Spanish speakers classes are doing more rigorous work and no more Spanish than our Honor Spanish 2 and our Honor Spanish 3, why aren't Spanish speakers getting honors credit? I did not have a good answer, and I still do not have one. Right now, I only have an apology. I am sorry. I'm very, very sorry. My apologies to them and to all the students that have taken these classes, to their families, as well as to those currently taking the Spanish for Spanish speaker classes. It's a big injustice to not give them the honors credit they deserve. I have not pushed hard enough because I was under the impression we have had to have non-honor classes for Spanish speakers in order to have honors for Spanish speakers. And I thought we would not make the numbers. We used to have an AP Spanish literature class, which got closed because of low numbers. Our new principal, Mrs. Borges, and our counseling office are working really hard to find a way to give our current students a level change to get honors credit while we work on getting a honor Spanish for Spanish speakers approved by the UC system. Because they do, these students right now do everything the honors classes do, plus way more. I just wanted to give a public apology and also to let you know that tomorrow we will be meeting with a curriculum site council. And if the committee needs any help from the board, that you would be hopefully more than willing to support our Spanish speaker students in obtaining honors credit they deserve. We're also working on creating a new honor Spanish speakers curriculum, as well as bringing back our AP Spanish literature class, for which we will keep needing your economic support, especially if we have low numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Augustine.
Augustine,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, we have one more public comment, and this is from a student. My name is Jackson Stevens. I want to speak during public comment on Spanish for Spanish speakers as an honors credit. I am currently a senior who has taken both the honors Spanish classes during high school and am currently in AP Spanish language. After talking with friends and classmates who have taken the Spanish for Spanish speakers class, it has become extremely clear that those classes are much more rigorous than the honors classes. I received A+ every semester in my honors Spanish classes, and I put the absolute minimum effort possible to those classes. I rarely did work outside of the class itself, and yet never stressed for a moment about my grade in the class because it is an easy class with very little homework. However, it is my understanding that the Spanish for Spanish speaker classes require much more work, and consequently, they learn much more. Yet the class with less work of these two is the one that is worth a higher grade weight. By denying these students in the Spanish for Spanish speakers the honors credit they deserve, the school is reducing their ability to maximize their GPA and class rank, and by extension, their chances at attending a top university. This clearly negatively affects our students of color, as they are students who take these classes. And if the school wants to provide an equitable curriculum for all students, they must make the Spanish for Spanish speakers class an honors credit.
Thank you, Jackson.
So at this time, we have the superintendent report, student representative, Ms. Ella.
Hi, it's good to see you all again.
Good to
Happy
see you.
November. It's almost October, and well, a little bit about me. My 18th birthday is in, I think, like 13, 15 days. I don't know. I'm really excited. I registered to vote. That was a big fun thing. So I'm super excited I get to vote. I was talking to my mom about it. And just for the students, I think everybody's kind of settled into the school schedule. I know it's not super ideal for everybody. I came up with another school schedule. I spoke with Mr. Corey about it, which I will talk to you guys about, give you the outlines for, because I was really racked my brain ways to help both the students, the staff, the teachers, you guys. I know everybody's under an extreme amount of pressure, no matter where you are, because you know, at some point you're not going to fit everybody's needs, but what you're trying to do is make it the best you can, which I know is really appreciated. There was a survey sent out to the students just to see about what's going on, kind of get an idea for their health. And I think about over 650 students responded, which is really exciting because now we have a big range of responses that can help everybody figure out schedules, kind of see how the students are doing. And I know that it can be a little bit different sides of the spectrum, whether it's thriving, doing great, or it's really hard, struggling, not doing great. Sports practice and conditioning started. So that is so exciting. I know I have a bunch of friends who are they're ready to be back on the field, but they're not ready to like run the gasser and run in the heat, which I totally understand. I probably wouldn't want to run at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, but I know everybody's so excited getting back out there, being with teammates. I think that really adds just a sense of the school community back in, because you're seeing your friends, your coaches, you're back together, the team, that mentality. I think is really great. I know I've texted a couple of my friends and they're like exhausted from practice, but they loved it. And I'm really happy that that was able to get pushed through. Now I have an idea to present about a new school schedule, and I have the whole thing written down as well, so I can email that out. But what it looks like is having school from 8 a.m. until noon. The classes will be 1 hour long with 40 minutes for lecture. So the teachers would film themselves lecturing, and there would be no student input during the 40 minutes. The teachers would teach. They can write stuff down on their whiteboard, show notes where the students can take notes, everything super diligently. The last 20 minutes of class can be used for breakout rooms, class discussion, tutoring, just anything where the students can interact with the teachers about the lessons. That way, once the lecture is finished recording in that 15-20 minutes, it is able to be posted on Canvas. So the teachers aren't having all of the incessant emails about the one small question they may have missed during this 5-minute, like small part where they were taking notes, and then the teachers don't have to be constantly checking emails. I know I email my teachers a lot about questions just because I'm more of a visual learner, so watching things on the screen can kind of be disengaging, and I know I need to take all my notes down. Also, if we have 3 classes a day, right, primarily students have 3 classes a day. That would mean it would be from 8 a.m. until 11, but that extra hour could be sectioned in for the wait times. So the waiting times wouldn't have to cut into lecture times, breaks for teachers, so that if there's a tech problem, they can have somebody come look at it, they can figure it out, maybe get some copies for another class, just really have that time so that there's not such of a scramble in between. since the majority, well, the freshmen would go until 1 p.m. because they have that extra class, but it's the same of like you would split up that extra hour in for breaks. Since many students have parents that work, this is a good time since noon is around lunchtime so that their parents are able to come home, maybe switch for cars, younger siblings, because I know during COVID-19 it can be really hard to find childcare. It can help if their students can take care of their younger siblings, take some weight off their parents, do a switch. Also, if the students are working, this gives them an opportunity to pick up the afternoon shifts, whereas night, when you get after school late in the afternoon, you can be working super late, which pushes off homework. Also, if we get out earlier, that can help have the faculty meetings earlier. So teachers that are commuting can get home faster to their families, their children, whatever that they have that are other priorities in their life. And also, since we have so many sports, I know, going on, so many things being all sectioned off, this would give our field more of a time for use. So if we're out maybe by 1 every single day, then we have that extra hour for the students to be able to have different practices. So it would have to schedule itself out, but I really racked my brain on this. And if you have any questions, I am super open, and I really am hoping that this is something that can be considered, because I have seen firsthand what it's like with how hard technology can be, and that isolation of being in your room with just the screen. And I know the teachers are doing the best they can, and the students, we really appreciate everything that the teachers are doing, but it can be really difficult just being by yourself looking at a screen. Many kids, it's hard to engage for that long, that hour and 40 minutes. I know personally some of my classes go the hour and 40 minutes without a break, and it can be hard to sit staring at the screen, good posture, taking notes, smiling, being engaged, because we're all teenagers, and having teenagers sit still for an hour and 40 minutes is, I mean, I have to stand up and stretch once in a while. I need to do yoga. Some of my classes have watched me do yoga just because it's like I need to get my blood moving, get some work, get some water. But I really think that this schedule can help out in a lot of different ways and really help the students just cut back on that screen time, still giving the teachers that hour of the 40-minute lectures that are posted so that the students are engaged, taking notes, writing, and then that 20 minutes of the tutoring or the breakout rooms or class discussion that can really tie everything into be engaging. So there's my update. If you have any questions, yes, Mrs. Clevenger.
Thank you so much for engaging in this and really thinking about it and coming up with something maybe possibly viable. Do you have this written down, sketched out or whatever? And does Superintendent Corey have a copy of it?
He does. I have one that just says like about the times of everything, but all the other points of like with having students with practice and parents and everything, I can include that too, and I can send an email out to all of you so you can really like see it visually written down. I can definitely do that. Probably by the end of tonight, I can send in an email about that.
Okay.
I did pass that along to Mrs. Borges as well. Ella and I had talked about this actually last week, and she was good to send that yesterday, and so I passed that along as well.
Okay, great. Great.
Ella,
Thank you,
thanks so
Ella.
much.
Ella, great job.
Thank you. It's so nice seeing you all. It's good to see
Chris
you.
has a question for you, Ella.
Ella
Yes.
is, go ahead.
You're muted, Chris.
Ella's going to stay with us,
Mhm.
Westfall, so we'll keep her around. Guess we have to.
Ella, I think it sounds great that you get older students maybe free to help out with, the younger kids' schedule, or just to give the parents a break. I don't know how many of our high school students have younger siblings, but I imagine it's quite a few. And I like that portion of that very much.
Thank
And
you.
at 12.
Thank you. I really had to, I know that you guys are under so much stress of trying to figure out what works best for everybody. And I just really thought of like, I have friends that work a lot of jobs, like they're working a lot. And so I thought of different ways that can help that. And just with lots of students with younger siblings, I know that also teachers having younger kids can be kind of difficult. You're struggling with finding childcare or running home for a kid. And I'm really hoping that this is something that can be really considered, because I'm really hoping, because I think it solves a lot of problems and really just helps all different aspects of the dynamic of the staff, the students, the parents.
Ella, I so appreciate your creative thinking.
Thank you.
truly impressive. So thank you so much for being a player in this and for your thoughtfulness.
Anytime, anytime. I love all the fun tasks that I get to do in this position and be able to talk to you guys and just really have the heart-to-heart conversation of it's a really big blessing for me, and I feel really lucky that I get to do this. And thank you all so much for listening to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ella, thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to share my screen for this next part. So there is slideshow from the beginning. So just a couple of actually fun things to share with all of you in regards to community partnerships to start off with. As you know, we live in a very special place, and there's a lot of what we do that we could not otherwise do without the generosity of our community partnerships. And so I want to start off, first of all, by thanking the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. We received a check this week from them for $32,175. And this is funding our community liaison position. So about 8 weeks ago, Chumash reached out to local school districts and said, we recognize that they've got this difficult time going on in this COVID environment and education, and we want to be able to help. And so we were asked to send proposals to them, and so the idea of the community liaison was already in the works. And so I put that down as a position for funding, and $32,175, very generous gift. And this position has already made a significant impact. We got rolling with this the day after it was approved by the board, after the position was approved on a substitute basis. The board will actually have an opportunity to approve the candidate this evening, but the person who's been doing the job is already an approved substitute. And so already getting out to homes that have been very difficult to reach by conventional means, such as phone calls and text messages and emails. And so we are very, very fortunate to have somebody that now can go out to both English and Spanish speaking homes and support parents and families that may be struggling to make distance learning work. So thanks so much to the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians.
Quick question, if I may, Scott, real fast.
Sure can. Yeah.
Do we ever send out thank you notes to all these wonderful groups that give us money, or is that just so old fashioned that we don't anymore?
No, it's not so old fashioned. It's totally appropriate to do. Yes, you betcha. So the other organization, a key player in our community as well, is the YMCA. And as most of you are aware, but certainly for the public, the YMCA, we had a significant need for childcare, and Ella actually alluded to some of this. You have dual job families, and both parents need to work, and in this case, one of them is a teacher and has to be on campus or try to make learning work at home with a couple of 2 or 3 little ones running around the house. It's very, very challenging, and childcare was a significant need. And if we're going to have teachers on campus, which certainly works out best for everybody, you have to provide for that need if you're going to have a realistic conversation about making things happen in that fashion. So the YMCA is providing childcare for 21 children of our teaching and support staff. And so we do have some kids on campus. They're much younger, much shorter, but it's great to see them around on campus. And it's been a significant relief for our families that are for our teachers and certificated and classified staff that need that to make work happen as best as they can for our students. So a big thanks to the YMCA, and they jumped in and they made some things happen in very short order for our staff. So a very critical need. Again, I couldn't have done it without the YMCA. I don't know what our option would have been. The other thing I just want to share with the board is that we had been talking about for the last multiple months anyway, that we are in line for funding for actually $8.3 million. And I've been saying prior to this meeting that we are anticipating with good reason that there will be $7 million available to us coming our way during the 2021 school year. And just a step in that direction to validate that statement is 2.6 billion in general obligation bonds were just sold by the state. And some of that will fund, I believe it's just north of $900 million will fund K-12 facility projects under Prop 51, which is us. So we anticipate an allocation from that. So very, very good news. There should be another bond sale that occurs sometime mid-year 2021, and we should see another allocation coming our way towards the end of next year. And so we'll be gearing up for more construction, which is an amazing, amazing thought. So just want to share that with all of you and the public. And then one other fun note, this is something I've not shared with the board yet, but our, I actually think, I may have touched on this now that I think about it in one of the presentations earlier, just by kind of by happenstance. But San Ynez High School is having its 125th anniversary this year. And yes, it is a quasquicentennial, and I did practice that in order to say that correctly. So just a kind of a neat little marker in our history getting underway in 1896.
Was anyone around for our 100th?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty special stuff. And I know Dean Anders made that a special time for everybody too. So fantastic. So that is it for my superintendent's presentation. And so I will stop sharing the screen and we can move on to the next part of the agenda.
So item F2, approval of the consent agenda. And do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mrs. Clevenger, and do I have a second?
I so move. Second.
Mrs. Clevenger and Mrs. Babcock, motion and second. Do we have any discussion on the consent agenda tonight? Okay, John, go ahead.
Assuming that consent agenda F also includes consent agenda G, consent agenda H, and consent agenda I. G1 is meeting minutes, and in reviewing the August 18th meeting minutes, I would like to know why the minutes incorrectly reflect myself as having voted nay on the following motions: F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, G1, and H1. Having heard nothing, I propose a motion that the approval of tonight's consent agenda does not include approving of the August 18th minutes. They need to be corrected.
Okay, John, hold on a minute. I was just reading what you were citing here. So basically you went through all of F2, let me get this, I want to make sure I have this right, to G1. Is that what you're saying? Or to H?
I'm saying F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, G1, and H1.
Okay.
Incorrectly show me as having voted in the nay.
Okay, so your vote was then yay? Is that what you're saying? Is that what your memory is?
Well, that's what the videotape shows, yes.
I don't have the videotape in front of me. Ms. Westfall, do you have any anything you want to contribute here?
She's on mute.
My understanding was that he voted nay to the consent agenda due to the minutes. And if you vote nay to the consent agenda, that includes all of those items. So
Incorrect.
if that's not correct, then we don't do each individual item for the consent agenda. It's
That's
all
why
of them.
everything is on there at once. So yeah, so you didn't approve the consent agenda because of the minutes. So what you're saying is you wanted to, we'd have to look at the motion, but does anybody have any memory of that? Mr. Corey, do you have any comments?
No, I believe that's accurate since you voted not to approve the consent agenda. That was a blanket no for all items in the consent agenda. But if we need to capture that differently, then we should certainly do that.
Okay, what are the
It's for the
wishes?
same reason that you see everybody else's name as a yay on each of those items. The opposite is also true if you vote nay for the consent agenda.
I understand that, Mr. Corey, but if you recall, the conversation last week is that you've prevented my comments from being posted in the minutes, memorializing exactly what I said.
I didn't.
So now you've got it.
But John, I never, that's the board's decision. It is not mine. I did
Mhm.
not prevent you from including anything in the agenda of the consent.
I believe that the board agreed that the minutes were going to be approved as written and that you didn't agree to that, which is fine. And so, but also that also meant that what you wanted us to do is you wanted us to pull out the minutes.
And I had a motion, excuse me, I had a motion to approve the consent agenda, and John asked to exclude the minutes, and you asked if I would change my motion, and I did. I said no.
Okay,
And that's in the minutes, I believe.
And John, approval of the consent agenda is not my discussion. That's the board's.
Yeah, you already said that. I get that. My point is, if this is
You
approved,
said that
as-
you said I denied you from having something included. That's not accurate.
okay, fine, I take that back. It's the board then that collectively denied it. What I'm saying is if we approve the August 18th minutes, it incorrectly reflects John Bakey's position on 7 different motions.
again, the consent agenda is taken as a whole.
I understand that.
Okay,
You're
well,
repeating
you
it. It's already
understand
been
that.
stated.
And what's the argument if you understand it?
I just said, I'll repeat it. If we
Please.
approve the August 18th minutes as written, it incorrectly reflects John Bakey's position on 7 separate motions.
Okay,
May I ask, what are the 7 separate motions? Are you saying, John?
F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, G1, and H1.
But there's only one motion. There was only one
And what
motion.
were we
and that was-
voting on 7 times?
We weren't voting. We were voting one time on approving the consent agenda, and all those items, I believe, were included in the consent agenda. Am I wrong?
no, you're not wrong.
I will say it for the 3rd time. If you approve the August 18th minutes as written, it incorrectly conveys the notion to the general public that John Bakey was voting in the nay to 7 different motions: motion F1, motion F2, F3, F4, F5, G1, and motion H1. Why would you want to do that? Why would you not want to make it absolutely clear to the public how each of the 5 of us stand on any given motion? Why purposefully confuse any situation, which is what you're doing?
John, excuse me. Be careful with how you're phrasing that.
I'm very happy with the way I phrased it.
Well, you may be happy, but others may not be, and you're only one board member. So we have 4 of us as well. So Chris, go ahead.
According, and I believe Jan is correct, I don't have the those minutes or the motion in front of me, but as a board, we voted, and it was probably 4-1, to accept those minutes, and those minutes are under the consent agenda, and we voted, I believe, again, 4-1 to accept that as a majority of the board.
Excuse me, Eileen, may I speak, Madam President?
Please do.
It's my understanding that this is the way it is with the consent agenda. You either agree to the entire consent agenda or you do not agree with the entire, it's a unit. It's always been that way in any board meeting I've ever been to. So I don't understand why we would be splitting it up, because that's not the protocol that we ever follow when we're doing a board meeting like this. If it's
Can we
consent, you can consent to the whole chunk of it. That's the way it's always been set up.
Then Tori, why did we take separate votes for each of those individual motions August 18th?
That
I
is,
don't-
that is the format of board docs. Am I correct, Ms. Westfall, Mr. Corey? That is the format of board docs. And as I recall, when we launched, we went live with this, we did have some questions. I believe it was Jan and I that may have brought this up. So how does this work on here? Because it is show it as being individual.
So even prior to board docs, the board has either approved or denied the entirety of the consent agenda.
Correct.
Board docs records that vote for the entirety of the consent agenda individually for each item. So it displays differently, but the practice has not changed.
And tell them for the record, you want the record to show that for those you vote yes. And it,
Who's speaking?
Okay, then for the record, I want the minutes tonight to reflect that for August 18th, I voted in the affirmative, F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, G1, and H1. By name, not just some board member.
John, I think really it's at the heart of this is the format of the minutes. I'm not sure if, I think it's the minutes and not the board docs, but maybe it's both. I'm not clear on that. So we have a motion, a second on the floor. I believe it was Jan and Tori. Did we want to make any changes to the motion this evening to approve the consent agenda? Do we want to make any changes to reflect John's request? Otherwise, we're going to move forward. No comments from the board? Okay, so this evening we are approving the consent agenda with a motion and a second. And I need a roll call, please, Ms. Westfall. Wait,
Can't hear you, Terry.
I think you're muted.
I'm working on it, just a sec here.
That's okay. Okay.
Mrs. Babcock,
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger,
Aye.
Mrs. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Burtness.
Aye.
Dr. Bakey.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-0-1.
No, that would be 4-1-0.
One.
4-1-0. Excuse me. Thank you, John. Okay, item J2, agreement with Santa Barbara. This is an action item. Now we're going into the action section of the agenda. Agreement with Santa Barbara County for School Resource Deputy Services. Mr. Corey.
Certainly. So this is actually happy to bring this one forward. We've been talking about this for a while in regards to the school resource deputy. And this is a service that has already been in place. Very happy with our new deputy, definitely a value added individual. This is the contract with Santa Barbara County, approving that agreement, approving the services provided by the school resource deputy and asking for the board's approval.
I would move that we accept this agreement with Santa Barbara County for the school resource.
Second.
That was Mrs. Burtness and Mrs. Clevenger. Okay. Motion and second on the floor. Is there any discussion?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Babcock?
I want to make sure that I just want to talk to Mr. Corey for a moment. In the past, at times, the parameters weren't always clear regarding school resource officers. This was a few years back, as far as always having somebody from administration present if a student is questioned by the deputy and those kinds of things. I was just thought perhaps maybe he could explain briefly how it's being set up. So we bring our great new deputy into our campus culture and make sure all the rules are followed as far as interrogating students, et cetera.
Certainly. This was definitely on the radar when we first brought Deputy Parker on campus, and actually sought a legal opinion for an update on access to information, records, procedures, protocols, making sure that we are ensuring the rights of students and families and keeping certain information confidential and those sorts of things. So we are currently in that process, taking a look at that legal opinion and making sure that we're dotting all the right I's and crossing all the right T's. But that has been a primary conversation for us, bringing him on board. So
Great, thank you so much.
yep, thanks for asking that question. That is important.
So access to student data will be monitored.
I'm sorry, you're a little quiet there, Eileen. I heard something about access to student data.
Right again? Access to student data will be monitored closely
Absolutely.
as to what is permitted and what is not permitted.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Corey regarding the agreement? Okay. All right, very good then. I have a motion and second on the floor, and roll call, please.
Mrs. Babcock,
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger,
Aye.
Mrs. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Burtness,
Aye.
Dr. Bakey.
Aye.
Thank you. Carrie, motion carries 5-0. Okay, item 3, the public hearing regarding, am I in the right? Yeah, sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials for the 2020 school year. So at this time, we will open the public hearing. We have no comments, public comments this evening.
No public comments.
Right, so we'll close the public hearing and we will move on to item 4, certification of sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials for 2020-2021 school year and approval of resolution 2020-2021-4 regarding sufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials. Mr. Corey.
Certainly, annual requirement to ensure the heart of all of this is that does each student have access to all both the either textbooks or other instructional materials? Is there equitable access for all students? And we're asking the board to certify that that is the case.
So moved.
Thank you, Jan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Clevenger and Mrs. Babcock. Okay. Okay, any discussion? John, go ahead.
Mr. Corey, would you please tell the board what the textbooks and sufficient instructional materials are that have been supplied for our 9th grade math students?
Primarily printed materials.
But
Or
the motion we're being asked to
digital.
vote on says textbooks or instructional materials.
A
Now,
sufficiency
I
of
understand
either.
from having spoken, right, and I understand from having spoken with students and parents that the students are not getting a textbook as was promised for math.
Who promised them a
Rather,
textbook, John?
they're getting printed materials I'm sorry,
Who promised them a
what was the
textbook?
question? The district. December of 2019 and January of 2018 at the board meeting.
So
It was stated that the students were going to be, returning to the traditional textbook style of teaching math.
So you already know the answer to this one. You know that we are in process of selecting a textbook. And so to ask why they do not have one, we're in the middle of a selection process, is an inaccurate question.
Mr. Corey, you interrupted me before I got to my question. I
Finish your
merely had
question.
stated the background. Well, I'm trying, if you folks would give me a chance.
Okay, well, we're giving you a chance right now.
Okay, a little decency from the president, please.
Oh.
My question is simply this. When the library has a stack of the textbooks that were used at our school in the pre-Common Core years, why are we not allowing the students to use those textbooks? Because at the last board meeting, what was stated was, quote, textbooks are a big expense, end of quote. But yet the textbooks that we currently own would cost the district nothing, and they have a proven track record of success. So the question is, why are we not allowing our 9th grade students to use the textbooks that the district already owns?
I
That has
think we
been a
know,
math part. Go ahead.
I think we know the answer to that because they're not aligned with Common Core, correct?
But
Correct.
we abandoned Common Core as what we are legally allowed to do.
We have not
Did we abandon Common Core? I don't believe
No, we
so.
have not.
Yes.
No, we have not.
Well, that's not what was said at the January 2020 board meeting.
So the sequence, yeah, John, we've answered this one. I'll give it to you again. We went to an integrated approach with Common Core standards. We are revamping the Common Core for a more traditional sequencing, but the Common Core standards themselves are not changing.
So we haven't abandoned the Common Core. We're
correct.
just changing the sequencing with an integrated model.
I suggest people go back and re-listen to the video from January 2020 because that is contrary to what was said.
Okay. We're not abandoning Common Core. The standards themselves are virtually identical. It is the pedagogy that differs. And how we choose to sequence that is what is at issue right now. That's consistent, John.
Chris, did you have a comment? I believe you had your hand raised.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, so I would ask for the board's approval of the resolution for sufficiency of textbooks
Okay.
and instructional materials.
Do we have a motion or do you
Yes,
need one?
yes, we do. I made a motion and Tori seconded it.
So
Tori.
we're ready. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Chris. They were kind of run together though, so you are correct. Thank you for asking. It's Jan and Tori is what I have. Is that what you have, Terry? Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Babcock,
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger,
Aye.
Mrs. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Burtness,
Aye.
Dr. Bakey.
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries 4-1. Okay, item 5 this evening is the public hearing regarding the learning continuity and attendance plan. I'm going to ask Mr. Corey to speak first, and then we will open and close the public hearing.
Certainly. So this is actually a two-part series here regarding the learning continuity plan. We are required to hold a public hearing with the plan in its current draft form for public input, and then approve the plan at another meeting prior to September 30th, and we were doing that. I'll be bringing that to the board on the 29th. I just wanted to provide you with a little bit of an overview in the public for what the learning continuity plan is to read it. It is not necessarily the most user-friendly document. So I just want to spend about 5 minutes providing that overview. Senate Bill 98 established the learning continuity and attendance plan. It's designed to meet the needs of what's called an off-cycle local control and accountability plan, or LCAP. So additionally, for the past, Jan, 5 or 6 years or so, Chris, we have an annual requirement for a local control accountability plan. We are off-cycle given the current COVID environment. This is designed to fill that gap in our unique distance learning environment. So it is intended to memorialize what we're doing right now, already underway for this current school year, and the whole distance learning and transitional environment that we're in. So just to give the board an idea of how many categories there are, it is very involved. At the heart of this, and certainly the public hearing, is stakeholder engagement. And we have held parent nights and had surveys and an opportunity now for the public to speak. It is supposed to address both in-person and distance learning options. How is student participation, think attendance, and what does progress look like for students, that keeping in mind that we've talked about both learning loss for both last year and this year, how is that being addressed? And other categories here coming up on the screen. Professional development, again, being in a very different environment. How are we training teachers to be most effective? Staff roles and responsibilities have changed a bit. We're supposed to, in some cases, address what we've done specifically there. How are we providing for our most academically needy students? Think special education, English learners, and other at-risk students. And then actions related to distance learning, and there's that pupil learning loss again. And again, keeping in mind that we're supposed to tackle both what occurred last year and what are the learning losses this year through data-driven decisions, and how are we going after that. So mental health, certainly, and social and emotion. Wow. Mental health and social emotional well-being. You've heard Ella speak to this already this evening. It's really at the heart of a lot of what's going on right now. How would we attend to that for both staff and students and our community as well? We have families that are hurting too. And then making sure that we're engaging families and connecting with, and thank you for the approval of that community liaison position as a part of that outreach. School nutrition, our students still getting fed that want to be fed. Additional actions for anything else that we may be doing outside the scope of what was currently mentioned here. Increased services, again, for some of those needy foster youth English learners, low income families. That's just an arching overview of what this plan is. And again, what you see is about 85% complete. And then everything else will be completed in time for the September 29 meeting. Okay, so just an overview for both the public and the board, and then onto the public hearing.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? We have a entertain a motion for, actually, Mr. Corey, we don't really need to entertain a motion because
just open and close the public hearing.
Okay. So we're going to open the public hearing. And since we have no comments from the public, we'll close the public hearing. Did anybody have any questions for Mr. Corey before we move on? I just have one quick question,
Sure.
Scott, and that just is continuity of instruction, page 5. I'm just curious about the fact that we're using Zoom and MS Teams, Microsoft Teams. I'm wondering how that's working for students. Is that, and maybe Ella can jump in on that.
Ella, yeah, she could get her hand up fast enough. Did you notice that?
Miss Corey, if she responds?
Oh, she's better suited for this answer than I am.
I know personally it's kind of difficult to remember which teachers are on Zoom and which are on Teams. I have heard Zoom is a lot better. I personally am a bigger fan of Zoom. I think it's easier to navigate and to use. I know some teachers prefer Teams, but I think that there should be a set. Either you're on Zoom or you're on Teams, because I know sometimes for the students, I know personally, I'm like, oh, is this teacher on Zoom or Teams? And some switch some days. So it's difficult, that switch back and forth. So I think that there should be a nailed down decision on Microsoft Teams or Zoom.
So I think the minutes should reflect that we at least take a look at that, because that's concerning to me.
Certainly. We have allowed teachers to choose. MS Teams is, Zoom is certainly the one that everybody jumped on first and fast, and because it was much easier to use. MS Teams, the reason we have been using that is it is baked in with Office 365. Every student has an Office 365 account. It is more secure. And those are reasons to strongly consider that. But Ella is right. We do need to commit with one platform or another. And we're certainly looking at that. So great point from Ella. Heard you on that one.
Great.
Thank you, Ella.
Of course.
She is the end user expert. I could not speak as eloquently as Ella on that one.
I'm so glad I asked the question, because I really was interested in hearing your opinion, your experience. So, okay, thank you very much, Ella. So we don't need to take action on this item.
No.
Any other questions from Mr. Corey before we move on? Okay. All right, item 6, teacher induction program memorandum of understanding, Mr. Corey.
Certainly, in order to serve our new teachers, first or second year, we have 3 of them that fit this specific category here that require state mandated professional development in those first 2 years in order to clear their credential. The Santa Barbara County Education Office provides those services, and we are contracting with them to provide that.
Do I have a motion to approve the teacher induction program memorandum of understanding?
I so move that we approve. Sorry, Chris.
Okay, Mrs. Babcock and Mrs. Burtness. Okay. And motion and second, any discussion? No discussion then? Jan, did you have something?
Nope.
No, you're good, okay. If there's no discussion, roll call, please.
Babcock,
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger,
Aye.
Mrs. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Burtness,
Aye.
Dr. Bakey.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Motion carries 5-0. Item 7, I believe this is going to be Ms. Lewis here. Approval of the 2019-2020 unaudited actuals report. Ms. Lewis.
That is me, yes ma'am. Mr. Corey or Terry, oh, you beat me to it. Thank you very much. Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, share, play. Sharing is paused. Bring my window to the front. Okay. Do you guys see? Okay, do you guys see a pretty picture or do you see my notes?
Your notes.
We see.
I see slides.
I do.
Do you see the white underneath or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Huh, okay. Hold on one moment, please.
Okay.
How do let's try this again, share. I think maybe this way. How about now?
Okay, and we see it and we see your backyard. Or your front yard.
You're showing your next slide presentation in the presentation. So this is your navigation presenter view.
How do I get out of this?
Wait a minute.
There you go.
There you go. You got it.
Slightly better, even though I'm sure you see the clock on top. I'm not sure why. I have 2 screens, so it acts funky. So I apologize for that because I didn't want you to see it. I wanted it to look pretty, but it is what it is. Okay, so I cannot believe that we are already at unaudited actuals and halfway through September. It feels like it's been a blur, but here we are and here we go, perhaps. Okay, so with every budget iteration, I provide what I call the analysis of changes. This is just a snippet of that document that you have attached in your board docs for you to look at. Below this snippet that shows the changes from one budget iteration to the next, you see the overarching rationale behind the changes. So you'll see, for instance, the change between the restricted and unrestricted from second interim to unaudited actuals. And then if you see the A, B, C, D on the left, underneath this snippet page, you see the explanation. So I don't have it included in my presentation because it gets too far down into the minutia details. But if you would like those details, they are available for you on the analysis of changes document that is attached in board docs. So we'll start by discussing revenue. And if you notice, the overall increase in revenue appears to be approximately 1.1 million. But as we discussed last year, it's misleading. The actual increase in our revenue is only 603,000. at the end of every year, we have to add back in what's called the STRS on behalf of payments, which is we have to book both the revenue that supposedly the state gives to school districts that then school districts spend on the STRS retirement. In reality, what happens is the state of California puts it into STRS on behalf of our employees, but they've started having school districts write that into their ledger. So what it does is it's a wash to your bottom line because you add the same revenue as you do expenditure, but what it does is it inflates both your revenue and expenditure. So I'm contemplating with first interim this year of trying to guesstimate our STRS on behalf of and adding it into the budget. So at the unaudited actuals every year, I don't have to go through this explanation and it isn't such a swing, but I feel that it's very misleading no matter when we put it in. So I'm still toying around with that idea, and I'd love to hear your opinions at the end of this as to whether you think I should add it or just keep discussing it at unaudited actuals, because the goal is transparency and understanding, and I think certain nuances such as this sort of inhibit that. So I would definitely be interested in hearing what your opinion is on that matter. But that being said, the increase in our unrestricted revenue is accurate. We received property taxes that exceeded our budgeted projections. We received $100,000 in prior year taxes that were not budgeted for, as the county collects them, but it's, you know, not something that they can guarantee. So it's basically back taxes that they've collected. We also received a $140,000 refund from SIPE. SIPE is our workers' comp JPA. So all the school districts in our county are a part of it, and we're doing really, really well workers' comp wise. We have really great programs and safety programs in place. So our workers' comp JPA finds that their ending fund balance just keeps rising. In an effort to combat that increase in unrestricted ending fund balance, they are giving rate holidays to districts and refunding excess fund balance back to districts in the same percentage that it was paid in. So we received $140,000 from that. Our forest reserve funds increased this year by $5,000, and our charter in lieu taxes were about $100,000 less than we projected. So the small increase in restricted revenues is related to a pass-through with the Aquatics Foundation depositing funds to cover expenditures that the district was legally obligated to engage in, but that the Aquatics Foundation was covering, if that makes sense. So that is revenue in a nutshell. Oops, I mistimed my slides here. So just talking again about the STRS on behalf. Our STRS on behalf of liability this year was $555,000. So again, our restricted revenue increased by this amount and our restricted benefits increased by this. So the net wash to the ending fund balance, it is a net wash to our ending fund balance in that we book both the revenue and the expenditure. So they cancel each other out, but they do inflate things like I explained. So looking at our expenditures, our unrestricted expenditures decreased by 1.6% or approximately $205,171. Our certificated salaries increased by 1%. Classified salaries increased by 9.6% due to overlapping employees, overtime, extra duty, summer work performed, COVID work performed. So classified salaries increased. We had a negligible increase in benefits when the STRS on behalf of inflation is removed, and materials and supplies were down 7%, services were down 6.2%, and capital outlay was up 64%. So what you notice when you look at our expenditures is really an overarching theme of COVID-19 throwing a wrench in our budget. So things that we would normally spend with students and staff on campus didn't happen because people weren't here. On the flip side of that, things that we would never normally spend on or things that we wouldn't spend so much on, we ended up spending as a result of COVID-19. So I wouldn't say that the decrease in materials and supplies as well as services and the increase in capital outlay is indicative of any kind of growing trend. I think it's an anomaly given the current situation that we're in. So we'll have to watch that. Not that decreases in expenditures are bad, but it's not the historical trend that we've been seeing, and it's definitely related to the COVID changes. The structural deficit. So the total deficit at unaudited actuals, when you take into consideration the transfers out that we make to our debt services, our cafeteria, and our deferred maintenance, which they're considered transfers out, but they're still expenditures on our Fund 01, was $75,000. So that's not a huge chunk of money. We have done a really good job of addressing our structural deficit, but this is the second year in a row now that we are actually booking a structural deficit, which is a little concerning given where, what's on the horizon fiscally, but we have the excess reserves to cover it. So we're not in dire straits by any means, but the fact that we are booking a structural deficit is something that we need to take into consideration and be mindful of, and know that, spend downs and things like that need to be purposeful and not just growing structural deficit that we aren't addressing.
Can I have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Alicia, maybe you said this earlier at another meeting. Going back to the restricted increase in expenditures with materials and supplies and related to COVID, will we get reimbursed for some of those expenses?
We have already been allocated CARES funds money. So in short, yes.
Okay.
In long, not everything will be reimbursed. Not everything is considered reimbursable. And it also depends on the entity reviewing expenditures for reimbursable and where the money has come from. So in short, yes, we have received some CARES funds. We just received a letter in the mail literally 5 minutes before I gave my presentation, approving our request for public assistance from Cal OES. So that's a plus. So we do have money coming in. These expenditures will be reimbursed. To what extent, we still don't yet know, but yes, they will be.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, moving on to our ending fund balance. So the 30,000 foot view of our ending fund balance. When we began the 1920 fiscal year, we had a beginning fund balance of 7.9 million. We are ending the year with an ending fund balance of 7.8. Again, you see that structural deficit of 75,000. So our ending fund balance actually decreased for the second year in a row. On the flip side of that coin, we're not doing so bad. I'm sure we're in an enviable position in comparison to many, many districts in the state and country, I'm sure. Our unrestricted ending fund balance, again, is 7.7 million. When you remove the $3 million reserve set by board resolution, that leaves us with 4.7 million. 2,500 of that comes out as revolving cash for the cafeteria. Basically, they're banks that don't get touched. And then we take out the unused lottery funds of $27,548, which leaves us with an excess reserve of about 4.7 million. So again, we do have a structural deficit, which is a negative, but we have an excess reserve in excess of our reserve for economic difficulties. So we are in a good place financially.
Right.
Any questions, anything else? Also, any opinions on how you guys feel about the STRS on behalf of payments? I'm just not sure the best way to make it seem like we're not, purposely inflating revenue and expenditures, but I also don't want to be confusing. So I'm not sure the best way to approach it or what you guys would like to see. So I'm open to opinions on that.
I have a question,
Yes, ma'am.
if I may.
Yes.
Arlene? Good. I'm not sure it's germane to what you were just showing us, Alicia, but I've been thinking about the monies that we're still sending out to Olive Grove. And I'm wondering when that payment is due and how much it is. And I mean, we did.
That's a very fun answer for you.
Okay.
The payment varies. It depends on their ADA for students that are considered our district's students. So that varies by reporting period and then, by year. And so what happens is the Olive Grove Charter School, just like every other school, submits their attendance at specified periods, P1, P2, P3. And with those numbers, the CDE then certifies their ADA, and then they use that with our numbers to calculate what we owe to Olive Grove. So it changes throughout the year, and it isn't until the very end of the year that we know that what we firmly owe them, but we're sitting at approximately $260,000 at this time. That doesn't take into account any changes with ADA this year, given COVID and kids moving and that kind of thing. So as of last year, it was in that range. We'll keep you updated though.
Okay, so make sure I understand this. So the 200 and some odd thousand, we're assuming it will be in that same range this year. Is that correct? But we don't have any specific numbers from them or CDE yet.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? Anything I can help clarify? Yes.
Olive Grove, they're under the same restrictions as everyone else.
I can't speak to their programs, given that they have a completely different design model. I don't know if they do in-person things. I don't know what their distance learning model is. I would assume, given the fact that they're based on a distance learning model, that the restrictions that they're feeling are probably much less cumbersome to them than they are for traditional brick and mortar, on-campus programs. So I'm gonna hearken to guess that they're probably not feeling it as much and possibly getting more students as a result of people being unhappy with distance learning at whatever their respective district that they're at. So I would not guess that they're hurting in the same way. I could be wrong. I don't know anything about their program, but that would be my guess.
They are an independent study model.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so any other question for Ms. Lewis or Mr. Corey at this time? If there's not, then I need a motion to approve the 2019-2020 unaudited actuals report.
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. Clevenger, do I have a second? Mrs. Burtness. All right, motion second. Any more discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Aye.
Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, Mrs. Babcock.
I read your lips. Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger.
Aye.
Mrs. Preston.
Aye.
Mrs. Burtness.
Aye.
Dr. Bakey.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Motion carries 5-0.
And thank you. And just one quick closing note on that. We are in a very fortunate fiscal position. And out of the 1,000 districts in the state of California, there's probably about 900 of them that would trade spots with us. So hats off to Alicia for her management, for her information, which she's been able to tell the board to make good fiscal decisions. We're in a good place, which is amazing to say in the middle of a significant recession.
Thank you so much.
Do a lot of things that we wanted to do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 8, adoption of the resolution 2020-2021-3 for adopting the gun limit.
That's also me, because I just enjoy talking to you guys so much that I just like to put as much as I can on the board agenda that I have to speak about. So What this is another one of those annual requirements. Basically, in 1979, I believe it was, Proposition 4 was enacted, and it was used as a way to limit the growth of governmental spending, and it requires government spending to increase no faster than the growth in the population and inflation for the entity. So it's basically a government form. We input our numbers and we just make sure that our expenditures are not inflating, outside of the parameters of Proposition 4. So we meet the parameters and we are good to go.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. So do I have a motion to approve? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, did you have a question for
No, I was
Alicia?
just saying, I would put the motion to approve the GAN limit.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the GAN limit. Do I have a second?
So move, second.
I have Chris and Tori. Motion is second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Babcock,
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger,
Aye.
Mrs. Preston,
Aye.
Mrs. Burtness,
Aye.
Dr. Bakey.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, we're moving into discussion now. We have a very important topic this evening with a panel of guests. Item 2, school reopening discussion, and I will turn this over to you, Mr. Corey.
Thank you, and thank you for letting our guests in. I will share my screen again and go back to the slideshow. So let me see, Mrs. Westfall, I can't see everybody. If you would confirm when everybody is here, I'd appreciate that.
I see. No, I think we have 3 more guests coming.
Who else is, I have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anybody else?
Oh, our 6th is Ms. Hoos, and she is already here. So we are good. Hello to everybody and all of our guests.
There we go.
This is about reopening our campuses. For those of you that aren't aware, there was a chance that on September 8th, we were not supposed to, but there was a possibility that we would move from the color chart of the criteria for infection rates per 100,000 from what was called purple to red. That did not happen. And with all of that in mind, there are a tremendous number of moving parts that are involved with reopening in a hybrid model, a transitional phase from distance learning to fully open. There's this hybrid model in the middle where we have half of our students on campus. And so I wanted to have the board engage in a discussion and invite some experts who you see in the screen before you. And there are 6 of them. And the purpose of this discussion, again, with no decision being made this evening, should the board make a decision to open our schools before the end of the fall semester, if given the green light to do so, what are the factors to be considered in making this decision? And so while this may seem like a rather audacious question, because certainly we want to get students back on campus, I would like to have the board have an opportunity to have a conversation without the weight of a decision right now to consider the factors, and they are multiple facets to this. So that's the purpose of our panelists this evening. So again, not asking the board to make a decision. I will be asking the board to make a decision about returning to campus for the fall semester at the September 29 meeting. And so we will talk a little bit more about that. But for tonight, and for the purposes of this conversation, there's no decision that needs to be made this evening. So hopefully that takes a little bit of pressure off of everybody. So format of this discussion, each of our panelists will provide up to 2 minutes of introduction, and just state your role, and what do you want the board to know about reopening from your perspective. And again, we have varied perspectives. There are 6 of you. That's 6 very unique perspectives. And so 1 to 2 minutes on each of those. And then our time will be opened up for an interactive discussion with the board. So again, 1 to 2 minutes apiece, and then interactive discussion with the board. Okay. Mrs. Westfall is going to keep track of time for us, and we'll inform the board when we hit an hour. And if Eileen, if there's the board wishes to either conclude or continue the discussion, I just wanted to track time and keep us moving forward. Okay. So our panelists this evening, I would like to thank them up front. I'll thank you again at the end. Michelle Borges as the San Ynez High principal, Heather Clement, San Ynez High teacher, Tori Martinez, here representing our digital and online learning options as our teacher on special assignments. She plays a key role in all of this as well. Susan Klein Rothschild, who is a school district liaison from Santa Barbara County Public Health. Miranda Burford, you've met our school nurse. She also has a master's in public health. Don't want to let that go. And Ella Hoos, our student expert. You all know her, and she's going to bring a valuable piece to this conversation. So if we could go in that order, starting with Mrs. Borges. And again, 1 to 2 minutes. What do you want the board to know from your perspective about what opening in a hybrid model means in your world? Thanks, Michelle.
Mr. Corey, do we still need your screen shared?
I'm trying to think of what my next, yes, we'll need the screen shared. I can get out of it for now if you want to see everybody in a bigger.
If you don't mind, if that works for everybody.
Oh, there you go. You're not just a little ribbon on the side. So, okay.
Yeah.
Borges, if you would get us started here.
Ella was putting her hand up. Did you have a quick question before I begin?
I'm sorry. I have so much homework tonight, and I was maybe wondering if I could get off at like 7:15. I just have a lot of responsibilities to take care of and just a lot of things going on. And I would love to hear everything about this. This is something I'm super passionate about, as you all have heard from me past speaking, but I do have a lot of commitments for school that I need to take care of. Is it okay if I hop off at 7:15?
I think you will find some compassion amongst the group, Ella. So if you would please give us your couple of minutes from that student perspective, we'd appreciate it. Go ahead, Ella.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, I can start. Oh, all right. Well, hi, my name is Ella Hoos. I am a senior this year at the high school, and I'm sure that this is going to come as no shock, but as a senior, all I want to do is go back on campus. I want to be back with my friends, back with the teachers, having those interactions face to face. And I know that there's a lot going on that we'll need to go into that. I personally am not so educated on all the logistics of it. So until I can really get informed on what we would need to do to go back, I don't want to present any ideas, so forth. But all I would like to say is that I think that having a hybrid schedule would be really beneficial. I think that if there's any way we could figure out maybe how to have each grade on campus 1 day a week, if that's a possibility, having Mondays like a study hall day where students can meet for tutoring one-on-one, and then have Thursday through Friday, each grade shows up for, I don't know if that would be something we could do. I thought of that as an idea because I know that this gives a way for each grade to be on campus. I am not sure about the amount of students on campus per, I don't know what the cap amount is for how many we can have on campus. I think it was half, and that's probably about like 550. But I'm really hoping that through this discussion that just not only as a senior, but my senior class were able to have maybe a couple days on campus, and just like my friends and I, we all took pictures on the first day. So it'd be really fun to like take the pictures of their teachers and just really have that last closure of the in-person discussions. And I know that it's taken a toll on the teachers as well, not having the students there. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, Ella, thank you very much. And you can exit whenever you need to exit. All the best with that homework load.
Thank you.
Mrs. Clement is next on my list here.
You want to go back to me?
Oh, so well put. Absolutely.
Just wondering. It's okay.
Number two, just bypassed you entirely. Yes, please, Michelle, go ahead.
No, no worries. I was happy to let Ella go, and it's always a pleasure to see her, even from Zoom, because as everybody should know, being a principal of a high school, this is very difficult to not have students on campus. You know, you have to have a special kind of love for high school students to do what I do for as many years as I've done. And I love it. So with that being said, as much as I would love to see students and have them back on campus, and how exciting it has been to drive by and see outside my window some students for athletics out there, that's been kind of a real treat recently. And you only gave me 1 to 2 minutes, so I better move along. You should know better than that. 1 to 2 minutes for me is almost impossible. But without going into other comments, other than letting Alicia know I got the stage right now, so you can your name's on everything. And so I actually have 3 main points. One of those being knowing that we have to meet things to think about as we make a decision on this, is that we need to meet the logistics of the Santa Barbara Health Department social distancing requirements. Those things can be everywhere from making sure our classes are balanced, which Melissa Shaw has done an amazing job trying to make sure that they're as balanced as possible, to make sure that we, if we do an A day, B day, or A cohort, B cohort schedule, that we can meet those requirements, which is taxing, and we'll have to have some more tweaks before we ever were able to do that. Movement on campus is always a concern. Movement with bathrooms, buses between classes, and then lunch and break, and how students would be able to manage and follow the direction from the staff on those are definitely in how we would be able to monitor and manage that. And then the high school being the more difficult of all of the options. For elementary being self-contained classes, there is no way that we can really try to model that with having to meet the highly qualified teachers being in the room with our students. So high school does complicate it and is not as easily looked at as the elementary, maybe at least the primary through 6th grade. The second point I would like to make is the ensuring that we meet the AB 77 distance learning requirements. Those requirements of daily live interaction has been a challenge for us, would be even more of a challenge for us in a hybrid model. Teachers are just getting settled into their distance learning. We've done a lot of work this last 2 weeks to tweak what we're doing and get it better, and hopefully everybody's going to hear some changes that teachers have worked so hard with the information we received Friday, and then yesterday, and then today, having discussions of what those changes will look like, which you'll hear soon. Just getting this down and then turning into to the hybrid, which would probably create that whole process over again. So if it's just going to be for a very short period of time, it would be complicated. As much as I would love to have kids, I just feel that if we know it's only going to be for a short period, or it could be going back and forth, and I don't know all the details in that could really cause, we're just getting settled into this. Is that going to be more disruptive in the end? But being able to offer them the other opportunities, clubs and athletics and other opportunities to be on campus to balance that out might be an option. In-person online combination for teachers in a hybrid model, again, that's going to create an issue or a new challenge. Let's just say that. And then subs, teachers are doing an amazing job at making sure that they get their subs. We have had 0 off-campus subs. I think we're going to have our first. All right. And then the last, we have currently some teachers off campus. And then the last point that I would like to make in my 2 minutes is the timeline. And I think I was already going to that, was moving in and out of the model could disrupt the current model of the continuity of what's going on. And we'd have to totally revamp and take a harder look at the blended model. So I know I went a little over, but I will pass pass it to the next person because I can say a lot more.
Great. Thank you very much, Michelle. Heather, please. Mrs. Clement.
Hi, my name is Heather Clement. I'm an agriculture teacher here. This is my 11th year teaching. I'm also a member of the Faculty Association leadership. So I have like a dual perspective to offer you. I don't speak on behalf of all teachers, but I do want to share just some general information that we gathered through a survey that I put out yesterday surrounding this scenario. And I asked teachers if they felt comfortable moving into a hybrid scenario this semester, if given the green light from our county, of course. 61% said that they were not comfortable, 39% said they were. And then the additional question was, if we get the green light, should we move into a hybrid scenario at second quarter? I mean, of course, if all of the stars are aligned and we're allowed to do that. Or should we go second semester, even if we do have the green light? And 57% said that they would prefer second semester starting hybrid, and 43% said second quarter. So just giving you a general temperature of where our staff are at. It certainly has been incredibly challenging moving our medium to a virtual one when we want students back in our classrooms. That's where the magic happens, and teachers, I think, are definitely missing that energy and that magic. But there's a lot of concerns that we have that have been raised. The big ones are simultaneous teaching. If we're in a hybrid scenario, trying to meet the needs of AB 77, theoretically, I would be teaching students in front of me, but also on Zoom. And then we also have the option for students to stay home and just continue with distance learning. So that's like 3 cohorts of students that I have to think about when I plan. We're also concerned about moving in and out of this model during cold and flu season. Also talking about, what does quarantine look like for teachers? Do we have to take sick pay? Is there workers' comp? So there's those are some pretty big issues to think about. I'm trying to make sure I have, substitutes have been huge. We've been using other teachers to cover when we need a sub, but that's not always possible. And we've been fortunate to not have to run into that situation, but it's gonna happen. Where we're just in a crisis scenario and someone's got to cover for us. But I know that teachers want to have students back on campus. We are missing the hands-on, especially as an agriculture teacher, wanting to take students out to the farm, our auto teacher or restaurant, or just being able to have groups in our classrooms and hear and see students interact. I think there's just a lot of challenges that we're pretty uncomfortable with.
Thank you very much, Heather. Tori Martinez, our teacher on special assignment in charge of our digital and online learning program. Thank you, Tori.
Yeah, good evening. So my world, independent study, that's what I've been working on and looking at it from kind of 2 lenses, the immediate need within the realm of distance learning, and then the potential of what the need could look like upon a hybrid return. So here's just kind of a couple bullet points in this world for you all to consider in your conversation. So independent study, it requires the same rigor and same quality of instruction. The courses are completed independently. So there's a teacher of record who's there for weekly check-ins for 30 minutes to an hour and proctoring of assessments, which can be done virtually. But there's no direct instruction happening from a teacher. Our students with an independent study of some sort would have access to highly qualified content specialists for A through G purposes. And that's a requirement to preserve A through G in courses. They have to have access to that highly qualified teacher. So like I could function like that for English, but I couldn't be the math person. They don't want me to help with math. We have engaged with Edgenuity, an online content provider, to help us in facilitating not just independent studies, some other things like credit recovery, and they're at RHS that's also coming into play, that allows us to provide the core content classes in ways where students could work on that independently, going away from the packets and pen and paper for everything. So independent study would function online. The one gap in that is electives, because some don't mirror. And if we're looking at this for quarter, that conversation looks very different as we try to preserve students' courses, their A through G, and allowing for them to move in to independent study. And with independent study, you can't require them to be in, and it's an optional alternative program, but they can opt out of it at any point in time, which is something to keep in mind. We can offer an alternative to our current distance learning in there. We could do that second quarter in, like I mentioned, kind of a hybrid of distance learning in independent study for their core classes, and possibly electives still in the synchronous, asynchronous version that we're talking about. I've been working through with the county on some of that, and that's definitely pretty feasible. Independent study could serve those students where distance learning is not functioning well for them. Distance learning or independent study could also serve those who are medically fragile or have those in their home upon a hybrid return, potentially. It can't serve both. So if we're looking at partway through a quarter, moving into the red, and do we open at, mid-second quarter, this no longer becomes an option for any of our students who can't return because of medical purposes. So we have to keep that in mind. We can't switch back and forth between who we are serving with it. Couple last things to keep in mind. There's an actual, in true independent study, a limitation of 10% of our ADA that we can serve. So if we went off last year, it's about approximately 85 students. We don't know if that captures the amount that we would need for either targeted purpose. Staffing also, typically a teacher can serve about 25 to 35 students with an independent study, because you're overseeing all their courses and you're having to meet with them weekly and proctor exams. So what that looks like and what our staffing would look like, there's a myriad of problems we'll have to solve once we identify our target group that we're trying to serve and how we staff that appropriately. And that's kind of the biggest part for my world as of now.
Great, thank you very much. Next is Susan Klein Rothschild. Susan, thank you so much for joining us from Santa Barbara County Public Health. And she'll be talking about the sandbox in which we are playing. And Susan, I also have the chart, the color chart for you if you're interested in me displaying that. Just let me know. Thanks
Great.
so much.
I'm Susan Klein Rothschild. I am a liaison between the county and all of our schools, our public and private schools in Santa Barbara County through this coronavirus. It is complex, it is confusing, and we all need each other. I thought a few things I wanted to share with you. One is that it's important to know that the state, the governor, and the California Department of Public Health, they set guidelines, they set guidance, they set parameters. We need to live by those. As a county, Santa Barbara County can make more restrictive guidelines. It cannot make it looser. So the state will set guidelines. The state will have a model that says when we can open, and the county can make it more strict if it chooses to. But I would say it's very important that you recognize you have the decision to make about your school district, your school. That decision is not made for you. Because it's permittable doesn't mean it's the best decision for each school and each staff. And that's an important decision that you will make and how you will make it. I can tell you that the county will support you in a number of ways. We will have contact tracing. When anyone tests positive for COVID, we will have people that follow up within 1 or 2 days. Who has been in close contact with that person? How can we isolate them, quarantine them as soon as possible so we stop the transmission? We are asking schools to notify everyone in that classroom. So if we find somebody who's positive, we have given template letters to the schools. You can send this letter to families. Your child or adult in that classroom needs to be quarantined for 14 days to protect him or her, as well as the others in the community. We are also required to do what we call surveillance testing. So this isn't testing for COVID when you have symptoms. That's already in place. This is regular testing of adults who work in schools. The current guidance from the California Department of Public Health is saying every adult who's working in schools should be tested about once every 2 months. That's so we catch people who are asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. The sooner we catch somebody who's got a positive COVID case and isolate them, the better we are at stopping the spread. And that's critical. Our goal together is to stop the number and decrease the number of COVID cases in our community. It keeps us all healthier and safer. I think it might be helpful, Scott, if you don't mind showing that chart.
Sure.
I wanted to share with you, you hear about this 4-tier model that the state has put together, and I wanted to share briefly what it looks like and what it means. In Santa Barbara County, we are in that left-hand side, the purple tier. And these 4 tiers are based upon how much COVID, how many people have tested positive, how many cases do we have in our county. You'll notice on the left-hand side, we have the highest risk. We have the more cases, so it's the highest risk of transmission across people. And on the right-hand side, the yellow is the lower risk of transmission. So what are the things we base this on? There are 2 factors, 2 metrics that we're measuring. The first one is how many positive COVID cases do we have in Santa Barbara County per population of 100,000? So we have, I don't know, something like 450,000 people who live in Santa Barbara County. So we want to keep the rate to be less than 7 per 100,000. And this is over a 7-day period and it's averaged. So you'll see if it's more than 7 per 100,000, then we're going to be putting ourselves in that tier 1. The other measure is for everybody who gets tested, what percentage of those who get tested are positive? And in that one, if it's more than 8% of the people who test are positive, it puts us in the highest category. And what the state says is if either one of these are above the number there, we are in the highest risk category. We will not move. The state will be giving new numbers on a weekly basis. I believe it's Tuesdays. We can see where we are, and there's a 7-day lag. Where were we last week? We are still at the purple tier 1. Eventually, and I'm hoping it's sooner than later, it's based on our behavior. It's based on what we do and wearing face coverings and physical distance and all those good things. We will get to the tier 2, the red tier. And that is a rate of 4 to 7 cases per 100,000, or the testing positivity from 5 to 8% of those who test. When we are at that level for 2 weeks, schools may reopen fully. So we need to be there for 2 weeks before schools have the permission to reopen. Again, that's a permission, it's not a must. And we will work with all the schools to help make that successful with whatever decision they make. After a county is on a tier, they must be there for 3 weeks. This is the state's way of making sure we don't move too quickly so we don't bounce back up. So we're in a tier for at least 3 weeks before we move to the next tier and have the more opening community. We want to move slowly. We want to keep the COVID rate under control. We want to keep people safe. So that's the movement from one model, one level tier to the next. And that testing positivity rate for the orange tier is supposed to be between 2% to 4.9%. There's a hyphen missing there. I apologize, it's from the state website. So we want to take this model, look at our numbers, and it's countywide. We all want to have fewer COVID cases, both to keep people healthy and to lower our risk of transmission for the entire community. I think those are the important things I wanted to share with you, and just want you to know that we want to work with you closely and with all the school districts to make the decision that's best for you.
Okay, thank you very much. And our last panelist, Nurse Burford, please.
I'm Miranda Burford. I'm the school nurse. It's a pleasure to see you all again. Having listened to everyone, everybody has put out very valid concerns. My role is as a health and also a mental health role for students and staff. And listening to and knowing what the guidance are, my biggest concern with opening and reopening is maintaining cohorts on our campus. We are working in a block system. So it's not like the elementary school. We have one group of students that stays with the teacher the whole day long in the same classroom. We have 3 blocks during a day. And during the day, there's movement from students that go from one block with a certain amount of 15, 16 students to the next block, which will be sometimes totally 16 new students and a new teacher. Going through the third block, having another teacher and more new students. So to put the picture together is if we have one student that is positive, that means we would have to literally quarantine all 3 blocks, all 3 teachers. And this is also going to affect then if we have cohort A and cohort B, because those teachers have to also teach the other cohort, meaning we actually doubling up. We already know there are no substitutes. And if somebody's really sick, who's going to teach these students? So at that point, we're looking at closing whole campus and go back to distance learning. Maintaining cohorts is very important to decrease the number of passing on of the COVID virus. And with that, if we have these increased numbers of passing, we will be closing and opening more frequently. That's why it's so important that if we can go to a small, maintaining the cohorts to keep the chances of staying open. Think about this as a student. I know, and even as a teacher, it is very hard that to be on distance learning. But if you can only come back to school for 2-3 days and there's a positive and we have to close right there again, what do you think that is going to do the mental health status of the student? It's like a double whammy. Okay, here we go again. With flu season coming up, the chances of having illnesses and potential signs and symptoms, this increases. So it's very important that we really start to look at how are we doing this in a way that we do not cause any more mental health issues. Distance learning, we finally having it started. Is it perfect? No. But going back and forth between hybrid and distance learning will only make it harder. It will also put a hardship on the students' mental health even more. And with that, I open it up for the discussion.
That was pretty impressive. Susan KR, if you could very quickly talk about the idea of once we, and this is important for the board to hear, if we go from purple to red, the concept that we would bounce back and forth between hybrid and distance learning requirements, expectations from Santa Barbara County Public Health, please.
So the state guidance at this point is saying that if you move from purple to red and you've been in red for 2 weeks and schools can reopen and you make the decision to reopen, that if there's an increase in cases, you would not go back to having to close the school. What we would do is we would increase the surveillance testing. That is the frequency with which we test the adults before or without symptoms, so we catch it early. If there's a child or adult in a class who is positive, clearly that class would close and quarantine for 14 days. And as Marin described, sometimes that's more than one class because you have more than one group that's seeing a teacher. If we have 3 or more cases in a school in a 14-day period of time, that's an outbreak. We may consider closing the school. But the goal is not to bounce schools back and forth between distance learning and reopening. That's why the governor's moving it slowly. And each tier you must be a minimum of 3 weeks. And that's why if there are more cases or if we go to a higher level, the thinking is we will not change what we've already done. We will simply increase the surveillance testing to be more effective at catching it.
Thank you. Important for everybody to know on that one. Would like to now, thank you to our panelists. Would like to open it up to the board for questions and some back and forth here. Any board members that have questions for any of our panelists, please, now's the time.
For me, I'm sort of absorbing, Eileen here, I'm absorbing what you have just shared with us. So I don't know that I have any specific questions right now, although I did learn a lot. Thank you, Susan, for clarifying, because we talked a little bit about going back and forth, but it sounds like that wouldn't automatically happen. Did I interpret that correctly? Oh, You need to.
As the number of cases increases, we would take additional steps, mostly testing, but not automatically close or revert schools. We want continuity and consistency for teachers and students. It's very difficult to change. That's why this model was built, to move slowly and to increase other tasks and activities, so you don't bounce back and forth between models and strategies.
Okay, thank you very much. Chris, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. And this would be to Susan. You said that the state has set guidelines. Now, can you explain to me, a guideline to me is something that you should do or you have to do, or what, how can you explain that to me and the rest of the board?
So the state has developed guidance for different industries. There's guidance for childcare programs. There's guidance for schools. There's guidance for dining restaurants. And it tells a number of things that need to be done. I would say core areas are about cleaning and disinfecting, face coverings. An example of face coverings in schools is that face coverings should never be worn for children 2 and younger. Face coverings should be strongly encouraged for children over 2 through 2nd grade. Face coverings are required for 3rd grade through adult unless they have an exemption, and they're exemptions for medical reasons. And face coverings should be cloth face coverings, and there are descriptions about what they are. Physical distance. 6 feet is a basic physical distance, although it's encouraged to be more when possible. The idea of having cohorts, small groups of children, stable groups of children and adults who work together. Again, if we have a positive case, we want as quickly as possible to isolate that person and those people who've been within close contact of that person.
I think what I'm not, is it guidelines, guidance, does everyone, what would happen if a school did not adhere to, I mean, I can see us doing everything you just said, but if the school opens and something happens, what is the state doing or the county for liability for the schools if they decide to open?
So I'm not the expert on liability. I need to tell you that directly. When any school or business opens, they attest that they're following the guidance, that anyone in the community or anyone can make a report if they feel that anyone's not following the guidance, and we will follow up with complaints. I don't know of any specific initiative in regards to the liability. I know there's been a lot of discussion about it. And Scott, Mr. Corey probably has more knowledge about this because it's been discussed at the legislative levels and all, but I don't know of any action that's been taken regarding liability.
There is currently no state or federal legal cover for liability related to COVID.
That's troubling.
Been pushed for very hard, but has not been passed.
The workers' comp aspect of this is also troubling if you consider some of the recent workers' comp notifications and warnings that have come from the SIPE JPA, which is the JPA that handles all the school districts in our county, basically. If we reopen schools and we have a specific percentage of cases on campus, it could cause a problem for us workers' comp wise. So it's something we should consider in our discussions.
I guess I would ask if there's some way that this concern, which I'm sure has been expressed, but why isn't it being addressed? Because they're putting the guidelines out there suggesting that we will be able to move forward, but yet there's no reassurance that the school districts are going to be covered if things do go south.
Mrs. Babcock, did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to add a little bit, piggybacking on what Chris was saying, that obviously our students and staff, faculties, everybody on campus, their health and welfare, education of the kids, that always has to be a priority. But I think it's important for the community to know that the #1 responsibility that board members have is to make sure that you sustain the financial health of the district. And so we can't discount that. So this workers' comp aspect is very important and something we have to be thinking about in order to do our jobs the way we were elected to do them.
Very much so.
Any other questions at this time? John, go ahead.
This is for Nurse Klein. The last time I checked the CDC's website, are you aware that there have been 0 reported cases of child-to-child transmission of the COVID virus, child-to-child being defined as 18 and under? And no place was that better exemplified than in New York earlier this year, where there were over 45 children that were all given daycare in close proximity. And again, there were 0 cases of children-to-children transmission. And again, the last time I checked the CDC's website, there were only 3 cases nationwide of child-to-adult transmission. So it's been correctly stated that children represent a dead end when it comes to the transmission of this virus. But yet what I don't hear very much talk about is the 20% increase in childhood suicide. You know, in the last 3 years, there have been 2 suicides in our community, and there was all sorts of crying and gnashing of teeth, of which I was a part of that. That is the much more real threat that this lockdown, this quarantine, the social distancing, the preventing of our kids from returning to school, that's the much more serious threat posed to the health and welfare of our children. I just wish everybody would truly keep this in proper perspective. Thank you.
May I respond to that?
I wish you would, yes.
My understanding is a few things. One is that in childcare settings with young children, it is true that the biggest risk is adult to adult transmission, not child to adult transmission or child to child transmission. There's good information and evidence on that. That's particularly true for children that are 10 and younger. For children that are older, for teens and others, it appears that the transmission rate is more like adults. So again, it is a new virus. We are all learning, but that's one of the factors, and that's one of the things we're seeing. I would tell you that from the state and from the county, we are learning things all the time, and the guidance does change. But I do want to support that the transmission for the young children is not from child to child. It's mostly adult.
Okay. Tori?
No, I didn't know anything. No, thank you.
And most of our classrooms would have only 1 adult in them.
If I could share from a parent perspective, if you guys don't mind taking a couple seconds. My daughter is a freshman, and I know that she wants nothing more than to be on campus, and I want nothing more than for her to be on campus for a number of reasons, with the highest reason being mental health and the mental health of all her friends, and trying to navigate online school and the additional detriment to mental health in addition to the isolation. However, I think that we need to do it in a way that is organized and one that won't bounce us back and forth, because I know that if she were to get on campus and then be pushed back home, I think it would be even more devastating than if she just had to wait a little bit longer. So if we could open in a way that, not insured, because I know nothing is going to insure it, but if we could open in a way that made it so that when they came back on campus, they aren't just kicked back home at the first, threat of someone having a sniffle, that would be really helpful, because these kids need their peers, they need their teachers, they need social interaction, they need sports, and they need it not just for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They just need it so that they can come back in a normal routine, because this isn't working for them, and their mental health of otherwise and historically perfectly fine, well-adjusted, happy kids, it's not good. So as a parent, that's just my perspective.
To hear, Alicia, thank you. I have a question. I guess mine is for Michelle. So talk to me a little bit more, Michelle, or talk to us a little bit more about a scenario, and I think Heather, I think you talked about this too, is if we were to go back into session with the green light, you know, we were in the right tier, we had the 2 weeks, we were ready to go, we somehow figured out how to pull this off. Would it be your professional opinion that we wait until the end of semester, even if we had a green light to go ahead of time?
So as I started to say earlier, yeah, there are lots of factors right now in the distance learning model. We are what, in about our 6th week. I think Heather mentioned to me earlier that we're in our 6th week, crazy as that is. That currently now we are just refining our practices. We had parent feedback, student feedback, and then we had staff meeting on Friday, and then Monday we put them in, they all went into departments, brainstormed, and the goal is by the end of this week, some more direction and changes will be made to make the current model much more healthful for our students, realizing screen time, homework, interventions, and all that stuff is in place. My concern is, let's say about, maybe we get into the red or the green light area where we're 2 weeks into something and being able to open. Let's say that comes to us to mid-October. That would be right after our quarter ends. And then we, let's say 3rd week of October, let's just give, that's about 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, that we get that opportunity to come back, and then we go into that model of some kids on, because we're having those discussions of what that model might look like, but until it's in practice, it's hard to work out those, those nuances that would be the challenge for not only the teacher, but the student, from their perspective of teacher paying attention to the kids in front of them and then the kids on the screen, and how that might look, as much as we have talked and discussed and planned, until it's a reality, it's difficult to know what that's going to look like. So let's say we start that 3rd or 4th week of October, it would be, and then you got 3 weeks, and then by the time you hit Thanksgiving, you've got a Thanksgiving break, and then you're just barely getting to get some feedback on how that model is working before you're giving final assessments and getting ready for the end of the semester. So I'm looking at that, at how that might end up looking. Do we just disrupt what we've just created as making a positive learning, even though it's not what we want, it's not the ideal situation, but trying to supplement that with the ability of bringing small cohorts on campus in more isolated areas for supports, controlling the activities on campus, maybe being able to, obviously the athletics, kids are excited about the athletics. Kids are excited. We actually had a group for theater outside following the same rules as CIF today. And looking at band, being able to come out and be separate. So finding other activities for them to be socialized, but not disrupting the process of what we're doing right now is my view right now.
Thank you, Michelle.
And Heather might be able to chime in on that concern of whether they feel distance, that combination might.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Just thinking about planning for a hybrid scenario with students who are in front of me, but also online, and also having a group of students who will be purely distance learning is really mind-boggling to me as a teacher. With the constraints of AB 77, I can't wrap my brain around what that looks like. If I have students in front of me, I want to be doing a lab. I want to be taking them out to the farm. So what does that look like? Do I grab a computer and have like a student follow me and film me? I just don't know. If I needed to wrap my brain around it, it would be nice to have the time and meet and move and transition to a hybrid second semester. And like I said earlier, our survey did indicate that 57% of our teachers would prefer to move into hybrid at second semester if given the green light during this time. And then of course we have our 43% who just want kids on campus now, whatever it takes, get them here. So I don't know what the answer is to make that work for me. And I'm just going to speak for me on that one. I just don't know what simultaneous looks like. How do I manage the behavior in front of me with my behavior of students on Zoom? Do I have my students in front of me do physical work, or do they need to be on a screen to submit work onto Canvas because that's what my online students are doing? How do I manage testing? Is a student testing online at the same time? How do I manage the integrity of that? There's just a myriad of complications about hybrid teaching with the current constraints of AB 77 requiring that synchronous online and in person. That is just really challenging for me to think about.
Mrs. Babcock, and then Tori, Mrs. Babcock, then Ms. Martinez. Tori, what do I do?
I know. I have a question for you, Heather. What I'm concerned about too is I'm not sure logistically, and I don't expect you to necessarily answer this, but logistically, we know that we have a small group of teachers who have underlying health conditions of their own. And presumably if the school were to open up before we're completely clear or in a better space, I'm not sure how, maybe Scott could answer it, or Michelle, I'm not sure how that would work with teachers staying home, teaching from home. What happens if you have still a group of kids who parents want them to be just doing Zoom and not back on campus? Because I'm sure there would be some parents that way. I'm not sure that all these outlying groups, how will we make that work to everybody's advantage?
Heather, did you want to comment, and then Michelle?
Yeah, I'll just speak quickly from a faculty association perspective. So putting that hat on, it was a beast negotiating this summer. It was very difficult because we have teachers on either end of the spectrum who have very valid concerns and needs. And it's going to be very difficult because we definitely have a group of teachers who are not comfortable coming back on campus. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that looks like. And for sure, because I know I've had students ask already, for sure we will have students who will remain in distance learning.
Thank you.
Michelle, did you want to respond? Tori Martinez, I did not forget about you.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I would like to, as I mentioned, I think very quickly in my opening statement, that we have currently 7 teachers that have opted to teach from home because of high risk situations. Very uncomfortable with that. And then I have 10 others that are on a modified situation, some due to health risks, and are very cautious when they do come on campus. So they're not always on campus, but only when they need to. So limiting their exposures. And I went through an interactive process face-to-face with each one of them, was, you know, as thorough as I could be with the guidelines of the agreement that was made with the faculty and the district, and Heather and the members of the faculty association joined me in most of those interactions. I think that yeah, obviously if we get kids on campus, there is no way they can be home. You know, it's going to be a mandatory in the classroom at that point. We can't have them teach from home. It's not possible. They're going to have to be on campus. Then your previous conversation about liability comes into play, because if something does happen for one of those high risk ones that have given us that information, and we have done an interactive process with, what does that mean for them? So it will be a challenge, and some may opt I don't know if they'll be forced to take, sick leave or leaves or whatever at this
Just a
point.
quick follow-up, if I may.
Huh?
May I
Yeah.
have a quick follow-up, Michelle? Just out of curiosity, what's our current number of faculty that we do have altogether?
As far as teaching faculty,
Teaching faculty, we're talking, what, 40, 45?
40, I think like 43 is what I think I had in mind.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. So
I
that's-
know, but I was like, oh, let me see, make sure I've got my current staff in mind, right?
That's okay. I did the WASP report, so I get it. That puts us at 40% of our faculty then. If we're dividing that into 17, that'd be 40% of the faculty who have underlying conditions or very hesitant to come back under full conditions, right?
Right. Well, 7 of them that are fully off because of off campus, except for staff meetings, because of at risk. Out of the 10, I'd have to go back and look. I think maybe 5 or 6 of them might have been due to, maybe it was only 5. I think about half of them were probably due to at-risk situations. The other one were due to childcare and family, it wasn't because they need to be off campus every day, but because of certain situations, they may need to teach from home because of, whether it was adult care or childcare or something like that.
Okay,
They had balance. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Tori Martinez.
I'm just fine waiting my turn. Excuse me. So this is looping back a little bit to just something to think about with the simultaneous streaming. What Heather was talking about, I actually chuckled a little bit in picturing again, do you have a kid, do you have somebody like following you with a screen and doing that? And I'm like, but they got to be 6 feet apart, right? So what is, right? So we add that in there. What does it look like? I will say it will be on order. I just got the POs approved now for kind of a test system to look at simultaneous with a larger screen and how we can connect that to a tablet of some sort and allow for a bigger view of your Zoom in there, basically putting the kids, if that was in the back of the room or something else, it's on a portable stand. Basically it's Ricky and our team manager basically maneuvering, thinking through how could this look in the scenarios where maybe it might be needed, right? Trying to work through that. It might not be the right solution for all classrooms and everything else, but that's there. However, we have to remember too, with technology, the supply chain struggles right now, getting access to things because we aren't the only ones right now, not just in our county or our state, but in our country who's looking at how do we socially distance, but get kids on campus. And so as we dealt with the supply chain issues related to personal devices, we're going to start dealing with the same kind of things related to this type of setup too. And you don't want to just get everything and then none of it works, right? It's not the right setup. So the simultaneous part of that, the amount of things that go clunk. And again, it doesn't mean none of it doesn't mean it can't all be worked through to some capacity, but you just hit so many limitations. And I always envision too, when we're talking about that. So we're streaming from our classroom. You have those kids who are only home. You have those kids in your class. And you have those kids where, it's their day home, right? It's your 50% in doing that. And envisioning that repurposing what you're doing through distance learning in class, because we don't get to do what we usually do in class. We don't get to do small groups and then we don't get to do cooperative learning things. We don't get to move around the same ways in our things. I mean, even looking at the farm for Heather and that you can bring them out and you've got a class of, you've got 16 kids that need to maintain their distancing and yet you're working with livestock and there it's there. And again, it's just so many barriers in there. And every time you throw out a scenario, there's a spiral that starts to happen in there. And so again, just kind of that realm of the technology part alone in there. I can envision the small groups of students and that a lot sooner rather than later in there. And I also, the idea of envisioning a hybrid option before we've even really gone to during the school day small groups is hard for me to wrap my brain around too. You know, we have the athletes, we're starting with some extracurricular stuff. Then as we start looking at the regular day and the baseline testing that's required for certain things and everything else, I can envision that a lot easier than it is to envision moving to the hybrid right now, which breaks my heart personally. I hate it. I think we all really dislike this world right now. But the baby steps have felt tangible and digestible.
Miranda, did you want to comment at all? Miranda?
I think the big thing what we have to keep in mind is the overall health being from teachers and students. And don't forget the high risk students and staff. And I know there are some high risk staff right now that is willing to come on campus because there are no students. So the population on campus is so small. So the chances of coming in and out and seeing and talking to somebody is very minimal. You can literally get around without seeing anybody, or you can make sure you meet everyone. It's up to you. But the big thing is there are some staff, and I know there's some students, and I'm collecting more and more. They like from, oh, I can, and the health issues, and you name it, it's there. So we really have to, that's why the independent study, I think there's a group where we just talked about, you can only have a certain percentages. I think it's going to be larger. Just by knowing how many students I already have on my case that I'm monitoring, and we have to be very careful. And then you have brothers and sisters who are coming to campus too. And they are now would be the conduit if the student with the high risk would stay on home, but the brother would go back and forth. They would be the conduit, but transmitting this the virus. And especially, like Susan said, the older children are just as susceptible as adults are. And even today, I looked at the numbers really quick. We had 4 in the San Ynez Valley. That was from between 0 and 17, that was positive. So they do get it. It does get transmitted. And the highest population is actually in the parents of our students. It is this group that is between the 30 and 49, and some of the 18 to 29. So that the transmission is lowered from where it used to be. It used to be 70 plus. Now it's all across. It doesn't matter no more. I even looked yesterday, Dr. Ensor put on the public health department, where it really is talking about the younger population is now who is spreading the virus. So if you want to just have a look at that one, it's on the public health sbc.org. And Dr. Arnsborg put a message out yesterday to really remind our young population, our young adults, of how important social distancing is and the wearing mask, and to make sure they do everything that is needed.
Chris?
Ooh, you know, the comments that I'm making are thoughts. They're going to be just thoughts that I'm going to go through that I've written down. And I know everyone is coming from a different perspective, a different situation, whether you're working in public health, you're a teacher, you're an administrator. It's challenging. This is so challenging. But public education has been just changed drastically, and it's not going to go back to what it was. And what I'm hearing is that we're going to have to be very, very flexible. And it's so challenging. The majority of the public, I believe, wants their kids back in class. And if it doesn't happen soon, if we don't test the waters, if we don't open the public schools that they've been paying for and are paying for in their taxes, we're going to lose students to other forms of education that are out there, because I know just in my family, these are things that are happening. They're trying to put modulars together of students. People are looking for answers right now, and these are the things that, as a public school, we need to address. And I understand that simultaneously teaching and the challenge that's on our teachers is just unbelievable, but it's the way things are now. And we're going to have to be extremely flexible, and we are going to have to dip our feet in eventually. We've got to do it.
Anybody else have any comments? Board members? Panelists, anybody else want to add anything at this point? No? Okay, I'm going to send it back to Mr. Corey.
Okay, listen, I cannot thank our panelists enough. Many are parents of young kids as well, so thank you for giving up some of that time as well. But thank you so much for adding your perspectives to our conversation. And we will let you leave the meeting now, but greatly appreciate your attendance.
Thank you very much to all of you. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Susan's not quite there.
She's figuring it out there.
She's getting there.
She's done a lot of these too.
Yeah, I bet she has.
Okay, that will conclude our discussion unless the board has any questions for me on this.
Anybody have any questions? Chris, go ahead.
Scott, I know you're going to be getting together with everyone, but how do you see this playing forward with the way it looks like our faculty is about evenly split on, not evenly, but very split on what to do on coming back on campus as a public school? How do we address this? How do we move forward?
Incredibly challenging. So we currently have a memorandum of understanding in place with staff for distance learning only and not for a hybrid model. So we would need to go back to the table and have that conversation. And it's a mix of the realities of needing to educate our kids and listening to some really impossible situations for our staff as well. And finding that blend is a huge challenge. And ultimately, if we wind up pushing hard on all of that, there are options for teachers if they can check certain boxes for not returning to work. And so how do we still care for our staff and care for our kids simultaneously? It's a very difficult tightrope to walk.
Comment? And sitting here listening to all of this, first of all, I'm so glad that I'm not on a school campus or leading a school campus. So a couple of things. One is I certainly appreciate the fact that we've surveyed staff, we've surveyed kids and families, and it's clear that we need to make some modifications to our current distance learning model. And I really appreciate that because I think it's just absolutely overwhelming what is going on right now with screen time and homework load, et cetera. I mean, here's Ella, who's a superstar, and you can obviously tell that she's stressed out. So that would by making those modifications, I think would help a little bit as we move on down the road. But my big concern is rushing into something to appease clientele when we really don't have a really strong plan that we feel comfortable with. That's my concern. So, going to the question of, do we change it second quarter? Do we change it the semester? I really think we proceed cautiously, but not with our heads in the sand. Really evaluate each aspect as best we can. I mean, there's all kinds of opinions, et cetera. We know what county health is pushing for, et cetera, you know, but I think if I was to lead the pack, I would say, I think we need to proceed cautiously, because what I don't want to be involved with in a very embarrassing situation is we're open, we're closed, we're open, we're closed, we're open, we're closed. That's not good for anybody. So it's that old adage of, you know, what is the rush? If we can make some accommodations to the current distance learning plan to alleviate what some of the current issues are with screen time, et cetera. There.
Yeah, I think we risk, you know, the perception that that we didn't think it through, even though it just seems like we've been thinking about this for a really long time.
Well, we know there's going to be bombs thrown left and right. I mean, there's certain things that are going to come up, et cetera. But, you know, because this is a new environment, I get it.
Yeah, no, I
Any
agree.
move that we make at this point, we know that the hallmark of all of this has been challenges. You lay out a best plan, you implement, and you find out, as Tori said, what goes clunk from there. But yeah, every option, we can't let that keep us from doing that. But certainly doing it as best we can moving forward is equally as important as well.
Yeah, I agree with Jan, proceeding cautiously. That's why I asked Michelle the question about, you know, what her thoughts were about timing, because that's going to be a big part of this. So, anybody else have any questions for Tori at this time? Comments, suggestions?
I guess may I? Eileen?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I'm right there piggybacking what Jan said and what Eileen said. I think we have to be really cautious with that. I think that's the message I took away from the people we were taught who came and graciously gave us their time tonight as well. My thinking at this point, just based upon what I've heard tonight, would be to wait until second semester. So hopefully we avoid some of that. However, I would have a caveat that if we got into somehow Santa Barbara County moved into the yellow zone, you know, that would be pretty strong indicator that we're moving in a very good direction in the county. And I would be certainly open to reviewing it again if that were to happen.
Well, you know, there's if I may, there's the new push by the county to they're asking people to be tested so they can play the numbers game of, you know, a higher rate of negativity, et cetera.
Right.
But I hope that doesn't provide false hopes here with you know, the data. I mean, I get it. They want to move out of the purple tier. And is that, you know, people are just rushing to get tested, and then we're there, they move, and then, you know, we stay there for 2 weeks or whatever it is, and then oops, do we go backwards, or do we, you know, what the deal is?
I hear you.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they are also feeling the pressure to test people when, you know, you couldn't get a test if your life depended on it for a while. You know, you had to have the right kind of symptoms, no symptoms, exposure, whatever it was. So, Chris, did you want to add one more thing? Go ahead.
But just on the testing, there's a lot of people that don't want to be tested, haven't been tested, they could be tested. And so much of the data has been skewed because of the way the reporting has been done, that a lot of people are uneasy with what some of these figures are. They've been less than something you can truly believe in because of the way they've been reported. There hasn't been something that's consistent. And that's troublesome to me too.
Okay, so anyone else? Corey, John, Jan, Chris, Mr. Corey, want to add anything?
No, thank you all very much for the time, and I hope the panel was helpful for our discussion.
Very helpful. Very, very helpful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Did you want to say something, Tori?
No, I was just saying thank you, everybody.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I lost my agenda on my screen, and so I had a glitch. A glitch.
Board meeting dates?
Yes, I had a little moment there. So thank you very much. Let's see, item M1, upcoming board meeting dates. Next regularly
We're
scheduled.
on L,
wait,
board
we're on
comment,
L.
Eileen.
L? Oh, we are
Eileen.
on L. See, I told you, I lost where I was. I do apologize. Board member comments and correspondence. Any comments from the board this evening? Okay, John, go ahead.
I think earlier this evening, the board may have been given some erroneous information about where we're at presently with math instruction. And Superintendent Corey and I disagreed over what had been told to the board previously. So what I would like to read is from the PowerPoint presentation that was given by Principal Swanitz, December 13th, 2019, regarding our standardized math performance. I am on the page entitled, "What are our next steps?" Again, he's talking about the failure of Common Core at San Ynez Valley Union High School. Bullet point number 3. Develop a timely and reasonable plan to pivot away from integrated math sequencing, that's Common Core, and back to traditional math sequencing. Now, he doesn't say that we're going to keep Common Core in any flavor or form. It says that we're developing a timely and reasonable plan to pivot away from it. The next bullet point. Now that textbook companies have had several years to properly design textbooks to the new math standards, we will adopt and purchase updated math textbooks, not instructional materials, textbooks. That's a direct quote. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other board comments at this time? No comments from the board? Okay, so we will move on then to item 1, upcoming board meeting dates. And the next meeting of the board is a special meeting. It's September 29th, 2020, and followed by a regular meeting in October, which is the 20th of October. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. Clevenger, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Clevenger, Mrs. Babcock, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries 5-0 at 7:56 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alicia, for sticking with us. We appreciate it.
Sure, good night.
Thank
Good
you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Night, everybody.
You, Eileen.
Good night, Jan. Thank you. Tori, Chris, thank you so much. Terry, thank you, thank you. Grandma.
Thank you, Terry.
Are we still live?
We are going to